On a cold November morning, Officer Dylan Mercer responded to a routine welfare check. A woman named Emily Carter hadn't shown up for work for 2 days. Her friend reported hearing strange noises from her apartment late at night, slow, careful tapping, like someone pacing in the dark. When Dylan arrived, the apartment was locked tight. No sign of forced entry. But the moment he stepped inside, a chill ran down his spine. The living room was tidy, but every single mirror was turned to face the wall, as if someone couldn't bear their own reflection. Emily was gone. On her kitchen table was a single, cryptic note. "I hear him, even when he's not here." 3 days later, another person vanished. Brian Walsh, a 46-year-old man, disappeared from his own locked home. Just like before, all his mirrors were turned around. But this time, police found something else. Taped neatly to the wall inside his dark bedroom was an audio cassette. The label read, "Walsh Night 1." The tape held nothing but the sound of recorded breathing, slow, shallow, and unnervingly controlled. The kind of breathing someone makes when they're standing perfectly still, listening. And then, at the 13-minute mark, a whisper emerged from the static. A single word, "Closer." Detective Laura Briggs, a veteran investigator who didn't believe in things that go bump in the night, took over the case. But this one was different. Every disappearance shared the same 3 bizarre details. The mirrors turned backward, a recording of someone breathing, and a note about strange sounds. There were no fingerprints, no camera footage, and no witnesses. It was as if the culprit existed only as a sound. Locals began to call him the Echo Man. 10 days into the investigation, a frantic call came in from a teenager named Zoe Franklin. "I saw him," she whispered over the phone. Or, "I heard him." For weeks, Zoe had heard faint footsteps following her inside her own home. But whenever she turned, nothing was there. No door opened, no window moved. It was like the footsteps were coming from inside the walls. The night she called the police, she heard someone breathing quietly from under her bed. She ran for her life. When Detective Briggs searched Zoe's room, she found another cassette tape, this one fastened to the floorboards. It was labeled Franklin Night 3. This recording was worse than the others. The breathing wasn't steady anymore. It sounded excited. And at the end, a voice whispered, "You almost saw me." Zoe's house was old, built in 1898, with lots of expansions over the years. During a deep inspection of the property, a construction worker uncovered something behind a false wall in the basement. A tiny, narrow room, barely large enough for a person to stand. Inside was a small mattress, dozens of turned-around mirrors, a shelf full of old tape recorders, and a journal wrapped in cloth. Briggs opened the journal. It was filled with entries, each describing a different home in town, and every entry ended with the same chilling sentence. "They Dante, hear me yet." The handwriting matched that of Charles Reddick, a maintenance worker who had vanished from the area 12 years earlier. At the time, everyone assumed he'd just drifted away, but Charles had a strange history. He grew up in a house where his mother covered all the mirrors, believing reflections invited spirits. As a child, Charles would spend hours recording himself breathing and whispering, then play it back at night. Neighbors always said he was too quiet, the kind of person you'd pass in a hallway and not even notice. He had lived invisibly, and he had liked it. The police finally understood the horrifying truth. Charles never left. He just hid. literally, in unused crawl spaces, behind old walls, in forgotten utility shafts. He lived between the homes of strangers, listening, recording, moving silently behind them. The Echo Man wasn't a ghost. He was a man who had trained himself to live in silence. One night, while reviewing the evidence tapes, Briggs noticed a faint clicking sound on every recording. After digitally cleaning the audio, the clicking became a clear, unique rhythm pattern that matched the sound of a loose metal grate in the storm drainage system near the old industrial district. Police immediately swept the drainage tunnels. Deep inside, they found a hidden chamber with more tapes, sleeping bags, food supplies, and a list of addresses, some already crossed out. The very next address on the list was Detective Laura Briggs's own home. That night, Briggs refused protection. She sat in her darkened living room and waited. Nothing. Then, a soft, nearly perfect footstep, not from a door, from inside her walls. The Echo Man was already there. He had always been one step ahead. Briggs remained perfectly still, acting as if she heard nothing. She could feel the quiet breathing from behind the drywall. Then, a soft whisper echoed through the room. Briggs, with a sudden crash, police tore into the hidden crawl space. But it was empty. He had escaped again, through a gap barely wider than a cat door, as if he'd dissolved into the air. The Echo Man was never officially captured. 3 months after the incident at Briggs's home, the disappearances stopped. Some say he died in those tunnels. Others believe he simply melted into another town, another wall, another home. But here's the part that still disturbs Detective Briggs the most. Every week, she receives an envelope with no return address. Inside is always a single, small mirror. Turned backward, the Echo Man investigation is still active, unsolved, and deeply unsettling. Because investigators believe he didn't want to take people, he just wanted to be heard, without ever being seen. And anyone, any home, any neighborhood could be next. All it takes is a faint breath, a quiet step behind the wall, or a mirror turned the wrong way.